Our guest today is Samantha Schartman. Sam is the executive director of the Marconi Society, but she's also the president of a local nonprofit that was created several years ago specifically to do data and data work in support of digital inclusion work in the Cleveland area and elsewhere, and has been working in this space with me for at least the last 10 years. And so Sam, thanks very much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Always good to talk.
And so the first question that I'd like to ask is what you've learned from the experience of the last 7 months of lockdowns and distance and everybody having to get online about digital equity and what it means and how we have to approach it.
Sure, thanks. From the way I see it, COVID has done relatively little to change the overall landscape of digital exclusion in the Cleveland and greater Cleveland and even Cuyahoga County and really national level. But what it has done it's taken a pretty big spotlight and shown it on the inequities that we've been facing and advocating for over a decade. The digital divide in Cleveland has really been persistent. More than half of those making under $20,000 a year lack any internet of any kind. So that means no cell phone, no data plan, nothing. That's roughly 1 in 4 households has no internet connection. That's 134,000 households that lack internet access of any kind. Now, there are some that are mobile only, and those are what we would also deem underconnected households as well. So the number of people that are really struggling with access during this pandemic is really staggering, and is pretty much up there at the top of the list for places in the United States, period. We're number 1, number 2, depending on the survey that you're looking at. That has not changed for quite a while. And the problem here is that the pandemic has created a situation in which connectivity is more important than ever. School kids are being forced to learn remotely, and those 134,000 households, if there is a school-age child there, they're not able to do that. There are also over 37% of seniors. These are our highest risk group. I should finish that. 37% of all seniors in Cuyahoga County lack any kind of internet access. So during a pandemic, these are our most at-risk population here that could be, affected by the COVID virus. And if the protocol these days is you're supposed to quarantine at home, right? And monitor symptoms and interact with your doctors via, online and remote telehealth options. You can't do that if you're not connected. And so while the situation has not changed, though, it has been 134,000 households for quite a while. That's a number taken from the 2017 census, American Community Service Survey numbers. That hasn't changed, but the importance of connectivity or the spotlight that this pandemic has provided certainly has turned up the significance of the situation.
So do you believe that the pandemic or the response to it has taught us anything about what the solutions would look like that we didn't know before this all started?
I don't think so. I don't think we've learned anything from the pandemic that we didn't know before. Where there is a lack of connectivity, there still needs to be infrastructure built or offered. Where there is a lack of competition to drive prices to be affordable, there still needs to be competition to ensure affordable access. Where there is a lack of skills, people still need training. You know, if anything, it has accelerated or put pressure on these unsolved problems that have not been dealt with. And so if anything has changed, I think there's been a greater recognition. It's only taken several 100,000 people to get sick and or die of this terrible illness for people to wake up to something that most of us have known and been, you know, fighting for the last decade. So my hope is the silver lining here is that this issue of digital inequity is getting the attention it deserves finally. And there is currently several bills and pieces of legislation nationally that are proposing ways of funding, you know, funding access, funding training, et cetera. So my hope is that a few of those might actually come to fruition, and that in the future we might actually get some momentum to change the situation. But so far, this is a hope and a prayer, and the greatest improvement we've gotten is a rise in awareness.
Well, thanks very much, Sam, and happy Digital Inclusion Week 2020.
Happy Digital Inclusion Week, Bill.